Welcome to Modern Mental Health. I'd like to start by introducing our panel members. We have Cole Dix here from CenterPointe, Street Outreach Peer Support Coordinator, I believe is the whole title. And then Kim Scrivner from Blue Valley Health. If you could each talk a little bit about your experiences working with people struggling with mental health issues. And then I'll do a little blurb of the book to kind of give those folks unfamiliar with it summary.
Sure, I can start. So my name is Cole and I do street outreach and peer support for CenterPointe here in Lincoln. If you've never heard of CenterPointe, we used to be a mental health and substance use treatment facility. We have outpatient and inpatient, several different facilities throughout town and in Omaha now. And we've kind of been gearing towards whole health is the idea. We now have primary care now as well, along with our mental health and substance use services. And so as a street outreach specialist, it's my job to go out in the community and meet and talk with people experiencing homelessness and get them into services, kind of figure out what their wants and needs are, build that relationship, build rapport, and then figure out what their wants and needs are and get them connected to appropriate services. And when I'm out and about on the streets, I run into all kinds of mental health symptoms and also substance use and other barriers that people face. So people experiencing homelessness often, there's a lot of stigma around homelessness. There's a lot of stigma around mental health. And what I found is a lot of these people have mental health symptoms first before there was other issues or substance use or, homelessness or anything else. And then, so that's my outreach position. And then with peer support is kind of a new thing in Nebraska. I was one of the first state certified peer specialists here in Nebraska. And basically it's an opportunity to use my lived experience with mental health and recovery with my mental health to relate and connect with people on my caseload who are also in recovery and model healthy relationship skills and kind of help them, support them get back to independence and where they want to be in life and meet their goals. And I'd say that's a general gist of what I do. And so with peer support, I also run into any and all mental health diagnoses. I work with people with schizophrenia, I work with people with bipolar disorder, I work with people with major depressive disorder, PTSD, bipolar, anything and everything. And co-occurring disorders, which means mental health and substance use.
Oh, sure. All right, and Kim?
I'm Kim Scrivner with Blue Valley Behavioral Health. I'm with the community support program, and sounds a little bit like what Cole does. We work with individuals that have a severe and persistent mental illness, people that have just been struggling probably their whole life. Some are a little bit maybe newer with their mental health. They've had certain issues come up with their life. They've had, mental health breakdowns. But we work with them in the community. We go out into their homes, help them work in their communities, help them with their going to doctor's appointments, taking their medications. People with schizophrenia, even just all the mental health diagnoses, like Cole had mentioned, with bipolar, major depressive, schizophrenia, they have times where they do better, then they have times where they're not doing so good. So some days, work is easy and other times it's not so easy. We just try to help them make sure that they're staying on their medications, because sometimes they have a tendency when they're feeling better and they're doing better, they'll stop taking their medications. And they think that, everything's going good. So they just stop their meds and then things start falling apart with them. So we're kind of there to help them, get their goals accomplished, help them with their ADLs, make sure that they're, having not so hard of a life, basically help them with getting through some of the things that other people might take for granted. So, sometimes people struggle even just to leave their home, and we're there to help them get back out in the community in a safe manner. So I've been doing this for about 20 years now, so I enjoy it. So,
all right.
You said ADL. What is that?
They're adult daily activities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in order for us to be able to work with individuals, they have to have some functional limitations, basically. We can't just work with just anybody. They have to have that SPMI diagnosis, and then they have to have some of the functional limitations, basically with their social skills or their educational or vocational skills or their activities of daily living. So basically like their hygiene, their nutrition, paying their bills, transportation, that kind of stuff. So
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
and we just help them get back on track.
Excellent. As you noticed, both panel members talked about not only experience with mental health, but also schizophrenia, because in case you didn't know, specifically, Hidden Valley Road addresses schizophrenia. So this is the publisher provided blurb. Don and Mimi Galvin seem to be living the American dream. After World War II, Don's work with the Air Force brought them to Colorado, where their 12 children perfectly spanned the baby boom, the oldest born in 45, the youngest in 65. In those years, there was an established script for a family like the Galvins: aspiration, hard work, upward mobility, domestic harmony, and they worked hard to play their parts. But behind the scenes was a different story: psychological breakdown, sudden shocking violence, and hidden abuse. By the mid-1970s, 6 of the 10 Galvin boys, one after another, were diagnosed as schizophrenic. How could all of this happen to one family? What took place inside the house on Hidden Valley Road was so extraordinary that the Galvins became one of the first families to be studied by the National Institute of Mental Health. Their story offers a shadow history of the science of schizophrenia, from the era of institutionalization, lobotomy, and the schizophrenogenic mother to the search for genetic markers for the disease, always amid profound disagreements about the nature of the illness itself. And unbeknownst to the Galvins, samples of their DNA informed decades of genetic research that continues today, offering paths to treatment, prediction, and even eradication of the disease for future generations. So quite a wide spectrum, telling this very personal story of a family, but then also the research that went on behind what is schizophrenia, how does it happen, how could we prevent it, how can we treat it. So I think it would be informative to start with Kim, if she could explain a little bit about what schizophrenia is. We were talking before, I think the media kind of portrays it in a way that's maybe not necessarily accurate to the lived condition.
Yeah, I agree with that. The media does portray it in a poor manner, and it is talked about a lot more now. Schizophrenia is one of the mood disorders where people, typically have maybe hallucinations, delusions, lots of paranoia. Sometimes they have heat and cold intolerances. So you might see someone walking down the street in the midsummer with full coat and hats on, things like that. But the media portrays it more that they're kind of out of their mind and they're seeing a lot of evil things. And then granted, part of some people may have some of those things to some degree. But it's not just, hallucinations where you're hearing major things, but it could even just be a simple voice inside your head and you think is real, or it may be a conversation with someone that necessarily didn't happen. So schizophrenia is something that's typically hereditary, but it's not, it's usually, I think, diagnosed around the age of 18, but sometimes a little bit later. And it's harder to know if someone has that unless they openly tell you, or you start seeing that, oh, who are they talking to and what's going on? Or if they ask you, did you see that over there? That kind of thing. So,
Sure.
but it's a lot more commonly spoken, I guess, about now. And I don't think there's any way to eradicate it. It's just we got to work with the treatment options and helping people through it. And, some of the problem, I guess, is people with the stigmatism that's around mental health, people just don't want to acknowledge what they're going through. They don't want to tell other people, hey, did you see that? Or what's going on? Or they might think that something's wrong with them. And so they just don't want to open up about it. So it's better if they can.
Yeah. Share the burden a little bit.
Yes.
So in this book, there are some pretty horrifying attitudes towards mental illness, particularly like the medical and political standpoint, speaking about like the schizophrenogenic mom, the idea that it's mom's fault that the children are this way, or, any other number of like mom's genetic material may be the bad reason, but also maybe mom raised them poorly. Like there's some pretty horrifying experiences. The programming committee and I were wondering if that approach hopefully has evolved and what you would see now that would be different from what we would have read in the book of 50s, 60s, 70s.
Well,
Well, I think,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Cole.
I was just gonna say we sure have came a long ways. The book
Yes.
does a really good job of showing what things were like, even before the 50s and then all the way through their lived time through the baby boomer age and up until now, and how it's evolved. And it just blows my mind that some of the treatment we used to try to use for those people would like just literally shock their brains until they were like numb and not experiencing symptoms. So we've came a long ways, right? And I'm happy about that. I'm really proud of that. And I think we still have a ways to go, though.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think it is, mental health is talked about a lot more. Back then people could just take someone into the regional center and lock them up, and that just doesn't happen. But people are still afraid of that. I've worked with a lot of individuals who still fear that we're just going to take them and lock them up somewhere. And that's just not true. I mean, there's a lot of steps and policies and procedures that people have to follow and go through, and evaluations. And it's more of a treatment team approach now. You can't just take someone and put them in a facility and lock them up. And, they do still have, they have a lot more treatment centers for specific diagnoses now that are around the country that are really doing a lot of good. So I think things have definitely evolved from where they used to be.
And so specifically, like in the book, they mentioned that electroshock therapy, they mentioned there was a scientist doing research on nicotine, where he would give one of the brothers a nicotine patch and his symptoms were gone while the patch was on. But as soon as the nicotine would wear off, the symptoms would come back. So ranging from, horrifying to like, okay, a nicotine patch, sure. What evolutions have you personally worked with? And then what do you think the future of treatment of schizophrenia would be?
Say for me, I guess personally, I have worked with a lot of people that still get that electric shock therapy. It's ECT treatment. It's still a common practice. And for some people, it just doesn't help. It makes things worse. And other people just rave about it. But treatments have come a long way. Medications have come a long way. They continue to do different studies, evaluations. And part of the problem, I guess, is some people feel like guinea pigs, just trying to figure out what will work for them, because everybody's body obviously is different and made up of different things. And some medications work for some while it won't work for others. So, but things have come a long way as far as different treatment options go.
As far as medication, it's came a long ways too. And there's a lot of fast advances just in the last 10 and 20 years, which is really neat. So for example, a lot of the medications out there for schizophrenia have pretty bad side effects, like tics and stuff. You'll see people, they're like picking their jaw and moving their jaw and stuff. And so there's actually medications out there now that help reduce those kinds of symptoms, and which is neat.
Yeah, I've seen that commercial. It specifically says, great, you found a medication that helps you with your mental health, but now you have a tic.
Yeah.
And here's a medication that would help, so that way you don't have to also screw up your mental health again by trying to find a new drug that will treat your mental health, but not have a tic, because it's such a struggle. And I don't know this from firsthand experience, but it is something that, based on my interactions with the community, I've received that feedback. It's so hard to find something that works for you, that when you do, you're like, do I just put up with this, kind of annoying side effect, or do I keep looking? So that is nice that they're continuing to try to develop the field.
So I actually, since I'm a peer, I have lived experience. I live with depression and anxiety and got diagnosed with ADHD last year. And so I take a few medications, and I have to be very aware of the side effects. I actually take an antipsychotic medication, which helps amplify my antidepressant. And so I've done a lot of reading and research into, what are the side effects? What do I need to be aware of? and when do I need to stop this if something does come up, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I'm sure that's helpful for the peers to know too, that like, it's not just like a fix it and quit it.
Right. It's an ongoing thing. So, I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for a few years, but I'm still on medication and it's still processed. I just met with my psychiatrist last week and we decided to change up something just to see,
Yeah, see if you
you
can.
know, just to see where we can get the best Cole at, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take medications forever, right? I have my own stigmas around taking
Sure.
medication too, right? And stereotypes and whatnot. And it's frustrating in my own mind, you know, why do I have to take medication? You know, why don't I feel normal, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Things like
yeah.
that.
Yep. Normal is the big one. Like, what is normal? But
Right.
we all have this idea of like what normal is, but like, really, what is it? Another question that I got a lot from the programming committee, they were interested to know that if one of your clients were on this panel here, what do you think they would want us to know, like as the general public, to kind of help understand what they're going through, the situation they're in? I think it's really easy for the public to be like, oh, as somebody's walking down the street. So what can we do from their perspective to be more helpful?
I actually thought it would be cool to have somebody with that lived experience with schizophrenia on this panel. I know there's some staff at CenterPointe, some peers that do it,
Yeah.
and I thought about asking them, but I kind of ran out of time before I could
Sure.
coordinate it all. I think they would want, you know, to fight that stigma of like, I'm not crazy, you know, for example,
Sure.
or I'm not ill. I'm just a person who happens to have this mental, you know, mental health issue, and I am normal by all means. It's just a
Yeah.
label that other people have given me or I've given
Sure.
myself. And we all have labels, right? You know, we're moms, we're dads, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're coaches, we're teachers,
Yeah.
coworkers, whatever. And one of those just happens to be, oh, I have schizophrenia or whatever else mental health issues that
Mhm.
people live with. So I think, you know, just talking about it more, this conversation right here happening is awesome, you know, is great, because the more we talk about it, the more that people are going to be comfortable with it, because we don't know what we don't know, and so we often are a little afraid of what we don't know, right?
Mhm.
And it can be scary, you know. My first experience with at CenterPointe was somebody with schizophrenia. It was the first individual that I helped get into a housing program. And, you know, I was 22 years old, still in college, not very aware of my own mental health at the time. And I'm downtown meeting with this guy in an alleyway, and he's obviously seeing and hearing things, you know, as I'm talking to him. We were sitting on a bench, we were doing a housing assessment of the Spadat to get him in for housing. And as I'm asking him the questions, he's having a very hard time answering them, and also looking up behind me. And I would look behind me like, you know, who's behind
Is
me?
there? Yeah.
You know? And that was very intimidating as a 22-year-old, you know, fresh in the field. And it was a quick wake up call of like, oh, you know, this is just a regular ass person. He's struggling, and his mental health has led to him being on the streets. And the cool thing is, 4.5 years later, almost 5 years later, I actually just ran into him at CenterPointe last week, and he's doing wonderful. He's been
Oh,
housed
that's good.
ever since then. His family is involved in his life again. He's taking
Good.
medications that are stabilizing him to the point that he can work. He has a part-time
good.
job, and he has a roommate. And so I think I also want it to be known that recovery is possible. You know, even if you have ongoing symptoms and you have to take medication for the rest of your life, recovery is possible.
Good note.
Well, I think for me, if I had one of the clients that were on the panel, you know, some of them that they would say would probably be that, you know, there is obviously still a stigmatism around mental health, and it's not always easy to get access to help than what you think it would be. It's not just being able to go to the hospital when you're feeling suicidal or having those thoughts, or being able to reach out, and partly because they have that stigmatism about their mental health, that they, you know, feel let down with themselves, that they're not able to take care of it on their own, that they have to ask for help. And for a lot of people, it's hard to ask for help. rural communities is another example. Transportation.
Ooh, yeah.
How are they going to get where they need to go if they don't have a vehicle? You know, a lot of people, you know, money is tight. Maybe I work with a lot of people on disability and they don't have
Oh,
vehicles.
sure.
So how are they going to get up to the hospital in Lincoln, for example? You know, I'm down in Beatrice, you know, and then they talk to the police, and maybe the police feel that they're doing all right, and they don't need to
Yeah.
be EPC'd, or they don't need to be taken in, you know, because they're not an immediate danger to themselves, but yet they need the help. And so then they're sitting in their apartments and with their thoughts, and that just gets out of control with their thoughts, you know,
Yeah.
when you're stuck in your own head. So I just think that they would probably say it's a lot harder to get access to help than what you think it would be.
Sure.
I like that. I agree with that, because even at CenterPointe, we like to call ourselves open door access. You know, anybody can walk in and get services, but the reality is we might be full that day for assessment
Sure.
spots. You know, we can get people in and talk to a crisis therapist or a crisis peer, but getting that assessment and then actually getting into services, it takes time. And sometimes we have wait lists, and it's just the way it is, unfortunately. We have to do a good job of monitoring our wait lists and make sure people aren't just sitting on there for months and months
Sure.
and months. We try to follow up with people, and if we don't hear back from them, then we kind of clear off some of that wait list, so we get the people in who are actively engaged and coming in and still needing the help.
That reminds me, I've heard a really great kind of description of it, and I can't remember who I heard say it. So if anybody has credit for this, please please share. But it was essentially, you know, it's real tough to tell somebody to pull themselves up by the bootstraps when they have no bootstraps.
Exactly.
Nothing there to pull up.
Right.
So I think
literally the people I'm working with downtown sometimes don't have shoes. You know, don't have socks.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's very insightful for both of you. Those are I think great takeaways. The next question is a little bit specific, so if you don't feel like you can answer it, Kim, that's okay. But the Galvin family has just such a kind of a dark passage. Like the whole plot is pretty dark. One of the sisters is almost killed by one of the brothers. The majority of the brothers were sexually abused by a religious leader. So some pretty traumatic things happened. But beyond those few things that were somewhat like environmental for them, what do you hope would be different for the Galvin family if they were born today? Like if their, you know, situation were happening in modern times?
Well, they'd have a little better treatment today. I think we're still fresh in the age of the conversation around mental health stigmas, but I definitely see it going in a good direction right now. And, you know, for them, personally, I'm big about parenting skills and social emotional learning skills.
Oh, sure.
I really believe if we can teach social and emotional learning skills to everyone, every kid that grows up in the United States, they're going to have resilience, and they're going to have the skills to set boundaries and say no and live a happy, healthy life. So I would hope that somehow somebody could intervene, and because it does sound like, you know, maybe Mimi and Dawn didn't have the best parenting skills and styles, and, you know, it was very military structured, like, and then mom was taking care of the family, but also kind of ignoring a lot of these like bad behaviors and not addressing them. And so it'd be neat to see some intervention, maybe with some parenting. And again, I'm not like blaming this on nature or nurture here. I think it would just help.
Yeah, that would be like a research-based thing that we know now that intervention could have helped prevent.
Yeah, because we have a lot of new therapies, you know, like dialectical behavioral therapy, for example. It was invented for people with borderline personality disorder, but now there's so many years of research on it that we know that it works for just about all mental health diagnoses, for myself included. You know, I don't live with borderline personality disorder, but DBT is great skills for me to learn.
And okay. Dialectical behavioral therapy is an evidence-based psychotherapy that begins with effort to treat borderline personality. There's okay, my quick blurb doesn't really give a good description. Is that like Freudian therapy, like when you think of going to a therapist and talking about it, like how would you describe DBT?
So I just got the manual in the mail yesterday. It's something I've been learning with my own therapist, but CenterPointe has also been trying to train their staff in it as well. And so DBT has 4 main topics, and the core of it is mindfulness.
Okay.
So living in the present moment is the idea. And, you know, you can be in crisis. We could have somebody come in crisis at CenterPointe, and once we get them de-escalated, you know, when they're thinking a little clearly, a good activity that we could try to do with them is a mindfulness activity, and something that gets them thinking, you know, what is so bad about right now, right in this moment? You know, I'm just sitting here, I'm talking to a therapist, nobody's coming after me, I'm not injured, I feel fine, I feel healthy, you know, just trying to live in the present moment. And then make sure I don't say them wrong. The next one is interpersonal effectiveness skills. And so that's basically relationship skills, right? Like how to get your wants and needs met, like literally, quite literally how to ask them, and steps, and phrases to use. And then the next one is emotion regulation skills, which is, I think most people have an idea of what that is. It's kind of being aware of your emotions and emotional intelligence, and then not necessarily controlling them, but learning how to label them correctly and express and regulate them at appropriate times and in appropriate ways. And then the last one of DBT is distress tolerance skills, which is, you know, when we are in crisis, what skills do we have? How can we get out of this mood and know that it's temporary, know that this feeling is temporary? So that's a gist of DBT. It's usually taught in a group setting, but as a peer, it's helped me a lot. And so I'm just using it as a recovery tool. And then I go to the individuals I work with, and I just say, you know, it sounds like maybe DBT might be helpful for you. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever thought of that? Since I'm not a clinician or a therapist, I wouldn't necessarily be teaching those skills, but I could just bring some awareness to people and let them know, hey, there's a recovery option out there for you. And DBT is just one. You know, there's all kinds of other new therapies out there that work in different ways.
Another thing that was brought up in this book is the issue of guardianship. So Kim might be able to speak kind of perfectly to this one, but the brothers who sort of had a diminished capacity, you might say, most of them struggled to take care of themselves. One brother eventually was able to get to the point where he could drive not to a job, he wasn't employed, but he was able to drive to like the grocery store and could drive home, things like that. But so that brings up the issue of guardianship among the sisters who are not affected by schizophrenia. What advice would you give to people who want to get help for a family member who may be experiencing something like this? It can be kind of a touchy issue to say that you're incapable of caring for yourself. So how do you kind of mediate that?
It is a touchy situation, even to get someone, for example, a payee. A lot of people don't want to give up the control. But the bottom line is, if they're not able to take care of themselves and their basic needs and their daily living stuff, it is best if someone, specifically a family member, but sometimes people don't have family members that could be trusted. So then they have to look for more of like a legal guardian. My suggestion, I guess, would be for family members, don't wait. You know, don't wait for them to get better. Don't wait for years down the road just to see what's going to happen. Go ahead and get the paperwork started, because it has to go through the courts to be approved. You know, get that stuff started. You can always closely work with them. Hopefully they have a good enough relationship where they can try to explain to the person who's struggling that, hey, I'm just here to help you. You know, I don't want to take this from you. I can work with you, but you need the help. So let's get the help now while you can. So just don't wait to get it started and just get them the help that they need. You know, they have a lot of programs out there now, even like the community support program, where they could get them signed up with someone who's gonna work with them on a regular basis to get those goals and to kind of get them set back up in what they're doing with their daily life and get those goals taken care of, get them into therapy, you know, get them to see, you know, a psychiatrist, get them on medications, you know, just basically don't wait, get things going now.
Yeah, start recovery right away. And I'd add, try to show some empathy in the sense that you look at things from the family member's perspective as much as possible, if you can. Maybe think about how they were raised, think about some of the experiences they've gone through, think about, or even ask them or talk to them, you know, when they're having an intense feeling or emotion, you know, what's going on, what are you feeling, and why are you feeling that? And then you can kind of take the steps to help them appropriately express and regulate those feelings.
Yeah, communication is definitely key.
Yeah. So, and this one kind of piggybacks. So thinking about, you know, somebody is obviously having a mental health struggle of some kind. A lot of things in the news lately where like police are being called to those sort of interactions, and maybe that's not the best resource, or at least they're not the best trained resource. Specific maybe to Lincoln, because that's kind of our sphere. Do you have any recommendations that, you know, somebody sees somebody obviously struggling who they could call instead of somebody like the police?
For sure, yeah. Center, I get phone calls about that kind of stuff a lot. Just, you know, Gomez Art Supply, for example, called me a few weeks ago and just said, hey, we have a guy outside, he's talking to himself and he's quite literally taking all of his clothes off right now.
Oof.
And I said, okay, you know, if he's legit naked, I would say go ahead and call, you know, the non-emergency number.
Yeah.
But something that I'm able to do is go out in the community and meet with people and do some crisis intervention and de-escalation. Unfortunately, I can't be just on call all the time, and there's only one of me. But CenterPointe, just last year, when they expanded to whole health, they also expanded our crisis services. And our crisis team now goes out with LPD on some visits and also out in the community. So Gomez had called on another individual a couple months ago, and our crisis team was able to go out because I wasn't able to make it. And then they met with that person, helped de-escalate them, and then let me know who he was. So this is kind of some integrated team treatment here. They let me know who he was, so I was aware of him. And then next time I saw him, I made sure to talk to that person and offer them support and help get them into services.
And is that just like CenterPointe crisis hotline, or like what? How would the public get a hold of that particular?
Yeah, we have a crisis number. Let me
Is it
grab a business card. It's on
is
there.
it 6695? Is that the one?
I don't know the crisis number off the top of my head.
Because I've got the CenterPointe helpline, but if that's a different phone number, then not necessarily.
CenterPointe helpline. What is that?
475-6695.
That's probably it.
Okay. All right, so that's 402-475-6695. And I'll try to have, when we post this to the website, I'll try to have them post some of these extra resources that we've talked about to go along.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested, I could give you some CenterPointe's information or some other information as well.
Sure, yeah. Because I think
it's 6695. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So if anybody in the community ever runs into somebody and they're, you know, talking to themselves or yelling at people or seeming aggressive, but it's not an emergency situation where you call 911, I would say you could go ahead and call that crisis line, and then hopefully they could come out and meet with the person.
Okay. Did you have any other resources to add, Kim?
Well, I think I would just add a little bit, for the majority of the general public, in situations that occurs and happens where they see someone just obviously not doing well and they don't know what's going on, for the most part, people are going to have fear to approach that person. They're not going to know who to call. So the natural reaction would be to call the police. The police do work with individuals from the task program, and they're, like targeted adult service coordination case managers that directly go out with the department to speak with someone about their mental health, try to get them the help that they need instead of just getting them put in the hospital, see what's going on. But most importantly, if you see someone that's on the streets, if you could, as long as they're not aggressive or doing something dangerous, go talk with them. It's okay. Just find out what's going on. Sometimes people just need someone to listen to them,
Sure.
just let them tell their story and see what's going on. Don't dismiss what they're going through, and then beyond that, if they need someone to get some help, then, call that CenterPointe number, call the task case worker and see if they can get some help instead of just the police. So
Sure.
there's a lot of people that just instinctively will call the police and let them try to figure it out what's going on and handle it. And some people are put in jail when they really don't need to be in jail. They just needed to get their story out and someone to listen to them. So
Yeah.
That's a really good point. It makes me think of several different times where I've been downtown and somebody is in psychosis and literally yelling and screaming at people, and people are crossing the street, avoiding them. And, it's my job to work with these people. So I just walk right up to them. I just say, hey man, how you doing? And it's what I found is a lot of times it's just like a click, and they're back and they're like, oh, hey, how are you? I'm doing good, and it's not as scary as I first thought it would be, and people aren't aggressive towards you if you're not going to be aggressive towards them. So one thing I did want to speak up on this panel was just the language that we use. CenterPointe is very big about being trauma informed, but also in whole health, but also person-centered. We use person-centered language. So it's very non-judgmental. It's very the person first. So so-and-so lives with schizophrenia, not so-and-so is schizophrenic, or they're mentally ill, no, they're a person that lives with a mental illness, stuff like that. And I have a good resource on that, just a one-page form if you guys are interested.
Sure. I think that is an important way to kind of start changing your own mindset too, is to think about the person first, and then what they're struggling with. A very good point. Okay, so this last question, the specifically the mother has a lot of onus put on her for the problems. I think the father is just as likely to have been problematic with his absence and lack of discipline and other things that we've kind of touched on. But what ideas would you have for supporting families that have a similar situation? The parents are caring for a child who's going through mental health struggles.
I think for me on that one, I just say simply treat everyone with respect, no matter where they are with their recovery. Take time to listen to them, take time to be with them and see how you can help them, not just try to push your own thoughts and beliefs on them, but listen to what they have to say. Be where they're at that moment.
Yeah.
I like that. And I think I would add, for families who are willing, come to some groups. CenterPointe and other agencies out there have lots of support groups and open groups to the community. We have peer support groups at CenterPointe that are open right now, and anybody can come. And some of them are just a really great opportunity to hear from people with lived experience and what they've gone through. And then it can help broaden a family's perspective to, oh, maybe this is what my son or daughter means when they say this, or oh, that makes sense. I've experienced that too. And it's not only going to be beneficial in the sense that they might learn some new skills and tools for their family member, but it's a new support group and they're going to realize, oh, I'm not alone in this. I know for myself, when I came to CenterPointe, I had never really addressed my mental health and my depression and anger that was underneath it all. And when I got to CenterPointe and started learning about mental health, and I realized most of the staff in our field have lived experience, we're in this field for a reason, is what it seems like for most of us.
Yeah.
I learned real quick, I'm not alone. There's other people out there that have similar experiences. And that was really neat and really eye-opening for me.
That is good to remember, that you're not alone in this, and that no matter what's on the surface, whoever you're talking with or to, you don't necessarily know what baggage is there. So they may not just be being rude. There may be something deeper going on that we can't necessarily see. So those are the burning questions that staff had. So I would like to open it to the couple members of the public that we have, if anybody has questions for Kim and Cole. I think this was a very good discussion, and I think something that a lot of people will be able to take away some tools and some ideas from.
I had a couple questions. In the book, they talked about like suicide, and I think there was a character that committed suicide that was schizophrenic.
Yeah, one of the brothers, one of the oldest brothers, I believe.
Yeah. And how prevalent do you find that in your work? The people that have schizophrenia also commit suicide or have those types of issues as well.
I don't know any research or data or numbers to be specific, but in my experience, it seems like suicide rates are much higher with people with schizophrenia and other mental illnesses. I've worked with several people just in 5 years that have committed suicide, and they had schizophrenia or other diagnoses. And it's really sad. It's really unfortunate. It's a hard time for everybody that worked with them, and just wish we could have done more,
Because I'm a librarian, I did look up the statistic. It says that the lifetime suicide rate for individuals with schizophrenia is approximately 10%. So that means that any time during their life they had suicidal ideation. So 10% of people with schizophrenia have suicidal ideation. That's a lot. Yeah, I know Leanne was working on reading this book. I think Naomi has read it, and I know Alyssa read it. So for the most part, I think. And you
Yep.
read it, Liz? Okay.
I read it all the way through.
This is more like book discussion type question, but I am curious what people think about it. The sister who pretty much said, peace, I'm out of here. It's not my job to take care of them. Out of here. My childhood was horrible. I don't want to be part of this. Versus the other sister who was like the guardian for one of the brothers, and is doing his dishes and things like taking the other brother to ECT treatments and things like that. Do you think it's fair that one sister stuck with it? Do you think it's fair that one sister needed to leave? And where do you think you would fall on the spectrum?
For me, go ahead.
Sorry. If I remember correctly, the sister that is like the guardian, especially of the oldest brother, she was the one that was kind of removed and
grew up with another family, essentially.
Yeah, that I wonder if she, because she was able to escape for part of it, if she has a different perspective, having not been immersed in it for as long her developmental years.
Yeah, She
So
was
she
able to see a functioning family and see that this isn't normal. It's not their fault.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of fairness, I just feel like nobody knows ourselves better than ourselves. So the two sisters, they know their boundaries and what they can handle and or what they want to try to handle, and they know their willfulness and willingness. And so it sounds like one of them just kind of took it on as a challenge, and one of them said, no, I just cannot do this. And I think that's okay, because we all have to set our boundaries for ourselves. We all have to know our limits. It's a hard thing to do, especially with family members, but setting boundaries is very important for everybody. It's a very, very important life relationship skill.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that knowing that you can't or that you shouldn't, that it would, like markedly diminish you to continue to care and pour yourself into that, versus knowing that like this could be a challenge for me to take care of them, and because nobody else will, I'll step up and, like just knowing that about yourself, and knowing that there's not like a right or wrong answer necessarily. I think that's important. All right. Do you have any closing remarks or thoughts about the book, about mental health care, anything else to share?
Caitlin, can you tell me, and maybe you were or weren't a part of it, when they were choosing the 3 books, how they decided on those 3 books versus other books?
Sure. So I'll give you the diplomatic answer, and then if Alyssa would like to share, she can, because Alyssa was one of our selection committee members. But basically what happens is the public nominate tons of titles. We get somewhere between like 120, I think this past year we had 98 titles. The selection committee winnows it down. We got down to 11 books that we all thought these are fabulous. Out of the 11, then we all individually voted, and the 3 books that had the most votes then were the top 3. I can only speak personally for why I voted for Hidden Valley Road, but that's kind of the process. I don't know if Alyssa, if I won't pressure her, if she doesn't want to speak, she doesn't have to, but.
Yeah, I'm happy to come on. I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting process, and it's a pretty diverse group of people on the committee. And so, everybody kind of made their case for books that they felt strongly about. Some of it really is kind of like timeliness and prevalence. And I think it's fair to say that mental health concerns have really surfaced recently as something that we should all be paying attention to and being aware of. And so just thinking about potential community interest, we felt like, this was an area that was kind of an opportunity for people in the community to learn more. And I know, Kate's kind of in charge of programming, so making sure that we're choosing titles that, will allow for some opportunities to extend the reading a little bit. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of why it's interesting. I feel pretty good about all of our top 10 or 11. I enjoyed all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for this particular title, I think people just thought that there was value in bringing up mental health as a topic for community interest.
It appears to me that Lincoln Public Libraries have become pretty interested in mental health and kind of how they can. I think first, when I started working at CenterPointe, they were interested in, we just don't know how to handle a lot of these situations. We don't know what to do. What can we do? And we had that conversation. And now a few years down the road, it's kind of like, it seems like the staff wants to do more. They want to know how they can best serve the people that are coming in. So I think that's really neat to see. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that we have such a caring library staff here.
Yeah. We have said that several times over among the staff, specifically here at Bennett Martin, but also system-wide, that we're very fortunate to have a staff that cares a lot about our patrons, and we want to make sure that they're doing okay at the very least, and able to do better with the tools and things that we can help them find. So yeah, we appreciate that, and we're glad that it's wanted interest. So I will send this off to our video editor. It should be up here on the website maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't want to pressure him too much, but we'll put up those resources that Cole threw out, and then have some of those hand out. I think we've got some helpline magnets or stickers maybe that we can hand out at the desks. There will potentially be an option for Robert Kolker to come speak, the author of this book. But in order for that to happen, Hidden Valley Road has to be the winner. So you have to vote for this book to win, and then we can have Robert Kolker come talk to us about doing the research. And he met all of the family members that are still living. I can't remember if he had recorded conversations from Mimi or if he was actually able to meet Mimi before she passed. But he has quite a depth of knowledge on this family. So I think it could be interesting if that's the book that you guys feel trips your trigger the best. I think that having him come talk would be great. So, all right, thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate the attendance, and I think the discussion was pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, have a good day.